back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively into the summer months. And, I wanted to have this guy on before like Father's Day, because when you write books, you sell them for Father's Day. But this is a summer story, and it's one that speaks to me. And he's one of my favorite writers. And I go on and on about writers that I like. I had Will Leach on last month and kissed his butt on a book. But this guy here hasn't been on the program, and he shows up on 60 Minutes all the time. Glory days. Jon Wertheim joins us from, I think he's in New York. By the way, Jon, I scored Springsteen on Broadway tickets. I'm coming back to the Apple in 2 weeks. So any book that's got Bruce and references to Mary Lou Retton and all that good stuff, and I was watching tennis and thinking about you in the French Open 2 weeks ago. It's great to have you on, man. Penning books, old school, brother.
Old school. Yeah, exactly. This is a book some books you write because this is a book I just had to get it out of me. So no, it's a pleasure. It was a lot of nostalgia for people of a certain age, but hopefully some relevance today. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I raise my hand. I am guilty as charged. I had a pregnant girlfriend in the summer of 1984. Things worked out. He's 37. He's beautiful. And I was 15 years old in the summer of 84. And I spent every night that summer watching Mary Lou Retton. And Springsteen was playing RFK Stadium the weekend my son was born, so I didn't make it to Springsteen. Michael Jackson was touring with the Jacksons that summer. I did catch Rod Stewart and Rush. But that summer, I spent watching every single night, the volleyball team, all of that. You're trying to capture the magic of that. We've had the magic of cicadas here, which took me back to 87 this week. So this week it's 84. But give me the idea of Glory Days, because there is something. Of all the interviews I've ever done, Jon, on my 30th anniversary, my wife would tell you, having Mary Lou Retton sit down with me a couple of years ago at the Super Bowl in Houston was probably the 12 best minutes of my life.
Really? Oh, that's funny to hear. Yeah, I mean, it was initially going to be. It's very heavy on Michael Jordan. The thesis is basically the same way Michael Jordan started the summer as one thing. He was a college kid who wanted to go back for his senior year. Dean Smith didn't let him. Jordan's kind of the schlubby college kid driving around in a Buick who wished he could go play with Kenny Smith. By the end of the summer, he's got a Nike deal. He's the third pick in the draft. He has an Olympic gold medal. He has this aura. He's going to Chicago the same way that Michael Jordan started at Memorial Day in one place and ended up somewhere very differently in Labor Day. You could say the same thing for all of sports. ESPN gets bought and sold. The NBA has Magic and Larry in the finals and is a completely new product. We have an Olympics that makes money. We have all sorts of legislation. College sports, college football teams can negotiate their own TV deals. This was kind of the summer sports went from JV to varsity, from black and white to color.
Boy, there's some Americana in there, right? I mean, when I think of that summer, I was a poor kid interning at the News American with a pregnant girlfriend, but I remember having a stack of McDonald's discount cards, and they swept up. Like every card you got was a free Big Mac or fry. I mean, they wrapped the flag. Ronald Reagan, 4 decades later, still has statues around. There's something about what the Olympics and Moscow and all of that through sports. And it's different look, I lost my football team around that time in my life in Baltimore. My baseball team won the World Series. Sports. And then the flag, right? Like, and Los Angeles and all of that, and late nights and 2 a.m. and playing volleyball and all of that became an American thing for sports, I think. Maybe different than Munich or even, in the 60s and Fist in the Sky in Mexico City. This was more of a celebration of America, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really, I forgot we can talk about the whole Baltimore in that period as well. But
the number one album was born in the USA, Springsteen, exactly. Right? Literally.
Exactly. For not by coincidence. Remember, you had the Soviet boycott of the 84 games. And when that happened initially in the spring, ABC's stock went down like 10%. This was going to be a huge deal. The Olympics this was going to be the nail in the coffin for the Olympics. They had
no idea we were going to watch Jim McKay no matter what.
Exactly. And but you say it jokingly. I have a whole section in the book about it. You're totally right. That McDonald's scratch off game, which people of a certain age will remember. If you U.S. got gold, you got a Big Mac. Silver, I think, was fries, and bronze was a Coke. And this was a huge deal to a lot of people. And you didn't have these Eastern Bloc countries, so I don't know how much McDonald's lost on this game, but that did more to sort of infuse this with this feel good. I mean, we learned something about getting free stuff. We learned something about red, white, and blue, about patriotism.
When America won, we got Big Macs.
Fed. We got fed, exactly. We got fed free food. What could be better than that? It's funny too, because at the '84 Olympics, initially it was like, let's go easy on the politics. The color scheme was like pink and teal. They had this opening ceremony, and it wasn't red, white, and blue and rah rah. And by the end of the game, it was this great celebration of America, and we were winning all the medals, and we were getting all the McDonald's and all these blue chip companies, Coke and Levi Strauss, all these sort of quintessential companies were there. It was a profitable Olympics, and we basically said, this is Reagan 80s, this is free market, good, we should be making money. And these 84 games really became pivotal in sort of the Reagan 80s, but also pivotal in the Olympics movement, pivotal in how it's okay to see sports as big business. It's okay to associate sponsorship and TV revenue with sports. We don't have to keep this pure. And these 84 games, I think, were really sort of pivotal in the sports landscape we have right now.
Remember when they didn't even have like ads on the hockey, on the whiteboards in hockey, right? Like, so well, the 80 Olympics were the leap to that. Eruzione, believing in mirror, like that whole period certainly has set the tone for everything that's become the largesse of Super Bowls and the star power of being an athlete. And certainly, I mean, we're talking about a decade before Brooks Robinson's trying to get the free agency and make $100,000 a year, right? So really the tectonic shift of money that you talk about, and fame and cable television, right?
Well, cable ends up being a huge part of this book, and part of when we tell the story of the growth of sports, cable, starting with ESPN, but all these other networks, and they need programming and pro wrestling, and it is this driving force that has gotten us to where we are today. No, you're right. It's so funny you mentioned the 80 games. I don't know if this is even in the book, but the total Olympic sponsorship in 1980, Lake Placid, $10 million. And it was basically, hey, Colgate's going to give toothbrushes to all the athletes. Great, you're an Olympic sponsor. I mean, it was $10 million. Peter Ueberroth comes in and says exactly what you said. How come we don't have logos on the boards when we have Miracle on Ice? We're going to have a small number of sponsors. They're going to pay a lot of money. He sets up this bidding process. Coke outbids Pepsi in 1984, $12 million. So one beverage sponsor, Coke, has more sponsorship revenue for the 84 Olympics than the entire sponsorship in 1980. And it just kept going from there. And now, here we are, whatever it is, 37 years later, and we're going to have an Olympics in the middle of a pandemic, because the phrase I keep hearing is too big to fail. We can't not have an Olympics with so much money, so much investment in facilities, so much media rights, NBC, all these sponsors. It's not because we want athletes to win medals that we're going to have a Tokyo Games next month. It's because we have too much invested. So you can trace a direct line right from where we are today to 1984.
Jon Wertheim has been a writer of writings for a long, long time at Sports Illustrated. Glory Days is the book, the summer of 1984, and 90 Days That Changed Sports and Culture Forever. Springsteen and Mary Lou Retton on the cover, two of my favorite things. Not Gretzky in there too, you Canadian guy in there, so I got to change my tune on that. Jon, I just want to ask about writing books in 60 minutes. It's been a little while since we've gotten together, and I used to see you at Super Bowls and certainly covering tennis and being the writer of writings that you are. Give me a little primer on being a 60 Minutes guy and being a writer of writings, because like some people would say, oh, that's the guy from TV. And they don't know all that background, but I think of you as an enterprise investigative sports reporter, or maybe a pterodactyl. I'm not sure, but like there's not so much of that anymore. We get a lot of sports, but sports is locking people like you and I out from telling stories these days, certainly on the back end of the plague. I wonder if I'm ever going to be in a room with an NFL player again.
It's a strange media landscape that was strange 2 years ago, and it got stranger with the pandemic. I'd like to think there's still a spot for that. I mean, we all have opinions about Ben Simmons, right? I mean, it's easy to easy to pop off, easy to have a hot take. Sports are in a strange place. Media is in a strange place. The good news is that it's sort of the Wild West. I mean, if you have a cool enterprising story. Hey, I heard that there's some real dissent in the Dallas Mavericks front office. If you have some reporting to back that up, as the guys at the Athletic did, that's a huge story. I mean, that takes over the news cycle. So I think if you can do this enterprise work, there can be a real big payoff. Obviously, it gets harder and harder. It's a lot more expensive than just having a take about whether Mark Cuban's a good owner or a bad owner, or whether Rick Carlisle should stay or go, or whether Luka's going to stay or not. If you have reporting to back that up, I mean, that's a recent example, but that story dominated the news cycle for days. So I think it's kind of high risk, high reward in the sports enterprise space these days.
I'm 30 years into this, John. You know, I got into this because I love sports. My last name's Aparicio. I covered hockey. I was a reporter, like all that stuff 30 years ago. And at some point over the last decade, the noise around sports, that part, the hot take part, I'm not offended by it. It's just I don't have a lot of room in my day for it. I don't have oxygen for it. I'm interested more in deep dish. And, you know, I wrote a book on the Ravens 7 years ago, and I remember all of these rabid fans at a fan fest in Ocean City, Maryland, saying, that book ain't got no pictures. I don't read no books. I ain't read no book. I didn't even read books in high school. And I'm thinking to myself, you spent $10,000 going to the Super Bowl. Your whole basement's full of purple flamingos. Don't you want to know a little something about Joe Flacco and like where he came from, or how John Harbaugh and his brother really like these? I wrote this book. I was excited about it. And then I realized, like, majority of people don't read. Then I saw the way 75 million people voted, and I'm a little bit at a loss to wonder where the information is. And I worry for writers. I worry for books. I worry for investigative reporters when Belarus is pulling planes out of the sky. And I love that guys like you have graduated to 60 Minutes, where those stories are important.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there will always be an appetite for that, right? I mean, you pull the tax documents of billionaires and see how little tax they paid. That's a story that interests us and dominates a news cycle. We may be getting those stories in different places. I mean, I think one thing about this Wild West media is it's never been easier. You used to have to pick a lane, right? If you were a writer, you wrote. If you were TV, you did TV. Now you can kind of toggle around and go back and forth. And I just kind of work on the assumption we're always going to want those stories. They just may end up getting them in a different place than, you and I did when we were kids.
What makes a 60-minute story for you? And run me through that part. I don't know that part of your life. And I mean, I know you as a writer. I know you very casually, but you just started popping up on 60 Minutes. And I'm like, good for him. But I don't know the whole story or what makes you on this week versus a story from something in Afghanistan.
Oh man. It's I mean, honestly, I don't know either. I started doing some I'm trying to think when that was. I think like 4
Do I
years
need to
ago.
call Sean McManus about this or
Yeah, exactly. Call Viacom now. No, it's in some ways it's different. It's TV, it's visual. At some other level, it's exactly what you and I have been doing, right? You find interesting people, you try to tell stories that haven't been told or that have been told, you give it a new twist, you ask questions, you use your best material. It's got to fit in a 12, 13-minute segment the same way. I can't just write an article that goes on forever. You kind of have to hit a word count or hit a page count. In some ways, it's exactly what I've been doing since I got into this game. In other ways, it's completely different. And I did a story. I did a story. It actually just re-aired last night, weirdly enough, on Shohei Ohtani when he was still in Japan. And hey, get a load of this player. He pitches and he hits.
Is there any place better in Japan just to go over there and hang out? This is great.
Japan is absolutely the greatest country in the world, as long as you brought that up. We did a story last year on kabuki, on the theater art, and I think half the reason we did it is just because it was so cool to go back to Japan's the greatest country in the world. But it's I don't know. I mean, in
Japan with baseball, it's just I was over there when Bobby Valentine had the WA 15 years ago.
Exactly.
And then I went 15 months ago before the plague to see U2. And it was kind of off season for baseball. And I didn't feel it as much because it was December. It was more Christmas when I was there. But It's still on my bucket list to go to a baseball game in Japan, which I missed the World Series by a day when I went over there with Ripken in 07. I literally missed game 7 by a day. And I've always wanted to see a game there. And what Ohtani has done here, I mean, I've told everybody they play here in August. Joe Madden, I mean, the Angels are here 3 nights. Man, if he pitches, you gotta go see that game, right?
It's one of the great baseball stories of our lifetime. And
I thought Jim Abbott was, by the way, but
yeah. Oh, that's good. That's a good. That's but you know, it's what was that? That's 25 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Jim Abbott is a great story too. But man, you went to Japan to see U2?
Yeah, we think we got COVID too. Yeah, we actually, U2 was playing over there, and I got like a $400 flight. It was like that time. It was in December where nobody, it was like the first week of December. Nobody wanted to go. And we wound up going over and spending a week. We went to Seoul, South Korea, it was phenomenal. It was a great life experience, but we think we got COVID when we came back. So Jon Wertheim is here. Glory Days is the book, the summer of '84. I feel like I could talk to you all day, all night. I haven't even brought up tennis or the French Open or how illuminated I was 2 weeks ago and the whole world stopped the Thursday afternoon. But hopefully you'll come back sometime again and visit and get down to Baltimore. Have a crab cake with us, Jon. Come on.
You got it. Anytime. We can do Wimbledon in a few weeks.
It was off my bucket list. Then I fell in love with London again. Now it's back on my bucket list, but I got to get the Northern Lights in an African safari before it's all over with. Glory Days, put it on your bucket list. The summer 1984 and the 90 days that changed sports and culture forever. Jon Wertheim joins us here from 60 Minutes and Sports Illustrated. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive.